Hey everyone, welcome back to some more Let's Have Dungeon Hack in the background while Tim talks about random crap. How y'all doing? Yeah, so I've been putting off doing the next one of these for a few more days than I should have. Today is June 25th, 2022. But thankfully, I'm thirsty, and that means Coke Cherry Zero Sugar, which is not conducive to me playing a game which requires more active participation. So I get to just chat with you guys, sip on some soda, reach over here and grab... Oh my god! My notes. Okay, do you see what just happened right there? We went down a floor, we encountered a white... I'm gonna have to lower this, that's way too loud. We encountered a white. A white is an undead creature that can level drain you. It immediately hit us, and if we were not playing a cleric who had access to level 3 spells and had negative plane protection up and active on us, it would have drained us a level of experience, and I would have put a hole through my monitor by punching it. Actually, I just would have reloaded it. It's not the monitor's fault that the game has level drain monsters that are unavoidable. It can absolutely hit you. There's nothing you can do about it, did it? Dungeon hack. Oh, man. So, before I begin talking about stuff, and we're going to start with some of the comments I got from you guys on the last video, rather, to talk about some of the things you guys were talking about, I want to talk a little bit more about Dungeon Hack, and some other things about it that I don't like about it. And some of these things can be brought over to the Eye of the Beholder series as well, and some of these problems are not present in Pool of Radiance. The stat line that is displayed to us, I couldn't figure out a way to see it, and perhaps it is here, but not enabled, but I didn't find a way to do it. We gain information about our character when we go to the character stat screen. We can see... Oh my god. This stupid weights. Or whites. The stat screen shows our current numbers with each of our stats. Like, we can see our strength is like 17. We can see our wisdom is like 16 or what have you. We can't see, though, some of the information which would be extremely beneficial to know. How much damage do we do with a weapon? What is our THAC0? These two very important pieces of information, which all players know when they play Dungeons & Dragons. You know what your THAC0 is in 2nd edition Dungeons & Dragons. Can help you determine how magical a weapon is, or how much, like, because you see how much damage it does, and you see if your THAC0 is improved, which is to say it gets lower when a weapon is equipped. You can make the argument that you shouldn't know that information, but the game shows you, like, how much charisma you possess. When you put on a ring that increases your charisma, you see that number go up. When you equip magical armor, you see the armor class go down, or up if it's cursed. I would make the argument that you should see your THAC0 and the damage that your weapons do. Pool of Radiance shows you this information, for example. And so I felt it was a bit silly to not have it here. And it's yet another reason why a pure fighter class of this game has such a rough time of it. Because you're never sure exactly, unless you get really super lucky. Apparently there's a scrying mirror in the game. I've seen it in the game file, so I know it exists. Which can be used to identify items held in your offhand. Or your main hand, but you would be a fool to put a weapon into your main hand for fear of you not being able to remove it if it's cursed. Especially for a fighter. You're relying on finding remove curse dust somewhere in the dungeon to help you remove any cursed items that might be on you at the time. Oh, God. The fighter is hard mode in this game. Like, super hard mode in this game. No ability to heal except for those strange devices that takes coins. No way to identify magic weapons so you know exactly how much damage it does. Oh my god, and we could have died right there and had a game over. That's a cockatrice. It moved up, it attacked me, and thankfully it didn't petrify us. Cockatrices are one of the many creatures in this game that can instantly kill you. Many creatures, and because we've just seen a cockatrice on this floor, That means that the entire floor will be filled with these creatures. This is one of the 2 random creatures that the game's going to fill this level with. Man, it's gonna rant about this for just a few more, like another minute or 3, and then we'll move on. I would hate to play the Dungeons and Dragons module that this dungeon master's running if there's like 50 cockatrices and whites in this this freaking dungeon. God, this is a nightmare to fight, and here I am with like a level 6 cleric to kill these. Man. On that note, though, some of the things that Adorkable was talking about really become evident here. We'll get to your comment more in depth later, Adorkable, but Adorkable pointed out that that's the sound of a cockatrice, by the way. Hope you guys like hearing it. We're gonna hear a whole lot of that in this dungeon. Wait till we get later on in this game. If we ever encounter Ettins, oh man, they're some of the best sounding creatures in this game. I mean that in a humorous way. We'll have to get lucky, though, to find Ettins. They're down lower in the dungeon. And, of course, there's about like 50 different creatures or so this game can spawn. Which is good. It's good there's so many other creatures. But it tends to spawn things that can instantly kill you or level drain you if you have Undead turned on. But Adorkable had pointed out that this game, Dungeons and Dragons itself, was made by miniature game, war game enthusiasts. And a game like this, yeah, I can see that. Like, time's passing, creatures get to, you move, you take your turn, you attack. And a dungeon where you can take your turn, like you have a certain number of movement points, you make attack rolls to eliminate enemy models. It makes sense that you would fight, like, I don't know, 60 ratmen or were-rats in a dungeon, if that's what was rolled for you to encounter in this place. Games like this really helped me realize that perhaps that's true. I say perhaps that's true because I know nothing about the history. So, Adorkable, I'm relying on you telling me the truth. Which I believe you are indeed doing. Uh-oh, that door. Oh no! Alright, good. Thankfully, it's a flare +2. And we have good gloves on as well, right? I forgot, did we find fire giant gloves at this point, or am I still wearing hill giant gloves? Another complaint about this game I'm going to say is that there were many ways for some of the character classes to gain the benefits of others, but not the other way around. A fighter has no way to, like, heal themselves at a moment's notice unless they get lucky with getting a healing potion, and many of them, or Wand of Curing. But a single, and just then again, there's no guarantee you'll get it. But like fire giant gloves, if you found them, that's suddenly +4 to hit, which is effectively, depending upon what you're fighting, but generally it's going to be an extra like 30 or 25% to hit a monster with your attacks. An extra 10 freaking damage. 9 or 10 damage, which is an amazing increase to your damage potential. That's like twice the damage you'll probably be doing with any weapon. So it's phenomenal. Meg is not going to struggle to kill anything any longer with the gloves she has on. Even Hill Giant gloves are still super useful, giving you a strength of 19 instead of whatever you had. One of the biggest benefits of this game of rolling a pure fighter is you get to have an increased strength, letting you hit the creatures more often and do more damage. But that bonus is removed by the inclusion of some of these items. And there's no equivalent for the fighter for some of this. You gotta get really lucky to find like a mirror of scrying or whatever. Again, whatever it's called. Can't ever remember finding it. And I didn't find one here in this game with Meg. And when my fighter was doing the same dungeon, he didn't find one before he eventually bit the bucket around level 10 or so. They must exist. I totally believe Master Survival when he mentioned they exist. I've seen them defined in the game files, so I know it's an item that can drop. But it seems like man, they should increase the drop rate on some of this stuff for some of the classes to make up for the fact that they don't have access to like improved identify. All right, we talked 10 minutes now about babbling about just dungeon hack and how I'm still not too impressed with it. So let's go ahead now and look at some of the comments I got on the last part. I'm going to spare reading you word for word some of these comments because I want this to be a little less what's what I'm looking for? Dictation based, as it were. I don't want to read from a script, or in this case, that would mean reading directly the comments I see you guys up here. But but let's go ahead and read some of the questions or statements you guys have made. So, Dan Brush, oh god, that could have killed us again. Door opens, there's a cockatrice right on the other side, moves up, attacks me, that could have been game over. I guess we're going to talk about the dungeon a little bit more. My fighter made 2 attempts at this dungeon, and what you just saw happen killed him. He walked up, there was a cockatrice on the other side of the door. I opened the door, the cockatrice immediately moved up, immediately attacked, and immediately killed him. It was game over right then. And I was like, what am I going to do? Like, there's nothing... I guess I could have just waited outside the door for several turns and hope there was no cockatrice on the other side of it. Cockatrice can open doors in this game, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but I suppose they're intelligent creatures. See? That wasn't us. That was totally the cockatrice. It also just occurs to me that since we... there is one thing about some of these creatures. And Dungeons and Dragons, I think even the barest touch of a cockatrice has a chance to petrify you. In this game, it has to actually inflict damage to you to have a chance of turning you to stone. The same thing with Medusa in this game, or other such creatures. There's only a handful of creatures that can cast actual spells at you. Most of them, in order to have their affect you, you have to be struck. So ticking off the chainmail to cast a mage spell makes it easier for the creature to hit me. I'm not sure I agree with what I did right there. Anyway, Dan Brush mentioned that he loaded up Dragon's Dogma and was playing that game, as I was talking about a situation he found himself in. I own Dragon's Dogma, and I've never played the game. I own a few old? Is that the proper term for it? I don't even know when the game came out. I own a few games of that sort. I think I was going to record a game... Oh, I'm going to get the name wrong. I want to say it was called, like... It wasn't called Masters of Magic. Let's see. Okay, I don't remember what it's called, but I can summarize the story for you. Spoilers. Spoilers here, by the way, because I'm pretty sure I'm accurate with this story. One of the first characters you meet, yes, you're being brought through this like crypt through your wizard mentor, who is having you there to get an item for him. At the end of it, he's sending you to a city to seek the help of an associate of his, and he has an assistant accompany you. But she's possesses you, and I'm pretty sure she's a succubus, if I recall correctly, based on a in-game cutscene which occurs. And I think I think there's a choice, as it were, if you want to have your main character have relations with the succubus girl or the cute cleric girl that you meet inside the city. Like, what you get, I think, I don't know the way to say it, everyone, so I'm just going to say it. You get a choice as to which of these girls you're going to aim for, as it were. And I can't remember what the game's... I hear a noise. I'm like, yep, that's a new monster. We're just going to leave that there at the moment, whatever that is. Why can't I think of the name of it? What the name of it is called at the moment? I really like the gameplay in it, and I like that you could play. It was one of these games where there was 3 different character classes, but your choice of them were determined on the skills that you took, not what you did. Like, you didn't pick a class to begin the game with. And I was picking the sneaking class, and you could kick people into pillars and knock them over, kick them off of mountains. There was an ice spell that would make people trip. It was a pretty interesting first-person. I'll call it a first-person shooter because that's what it felt like. But a first-person brawler might be more appropriate, given that there was melee weapons in this game, and quite a few of them. I liked it a lot. I started to record it, but then I never finished it. And I decided to just delete the recordings because I had a few voice audio issues with them. How loud is this? This sounds really loud. That's still really loud. We need to lower this a bit more. I mean, I know you guys love the sound of the cockatrice, but... Anyway, I'm behind you, Dad Bush, watching you play your Dragon's Dogma, apparently. Several of you had been talking about my nephew, and thank you very much. Adorkable in particular, thank you for reminding me that he's very young, and that as it's his first role-playing game, he wants to win, and it's a bit different than other games he's played. Like, he's rolling dice. What other games has he rolled dice in? Monopoly. I'm going to try Turning Undead, which is always a mistake. Turning Undead causes the game to lag a bit. And if you don't turn the undead, especially powerful undead, like a wight that can level drain you, it's going to get a chance to attack you. And in that case, it hit Meg. And again, she would have lost another level had I not had negative plane protection in effect. Thankfully, we're playing the best class in this game, the Mage Cleric, which can get to the end of the game without too much trouble, assuming I don't make too many mistakes like I've been doing so far. You've encouraged me to play the game again with my nephew. It was really the shock that he would do something like lie about his dice that was... It was a bit baffling to us that he would do such a thing, but he wants to win more than anything else, and it's going to be tricky to try to break him out of that, but we can probably do it. Dan Bush shared the experience of him. Oh, that's a mummy. Of himself dealing with a cheater in his Dungeons and Dragons games, where he made an announcement like, "Hey, I know people are cheating," and it stopped for a little bit, but it came back again later on. Wow, that's a strong mummy to take 2 Agonizer's Scorchers. Mummies take half damage from all physical attacks, which is why you saw me breaking out the spell book. Can they disease you in this game? I can't remember. And there's the way down. Eat some more food. Oh, right. So you can see one of the special magical effects occurring here. There's an area in this dungeon here that we're passing through, which I think, like, multiplies by about, like, 10. The rate at which you desire food, and your hunger meter rapidly decreases the more that you hang out in that area. So we want to get away from that. Well, you mentioned, Dan Bush, about the guy using really tiny dice so you don't have a good chance of seeing them. That would never fly with me. I would make the players, like, if I suspected that, I would make the players roll in in my case, I use the Mealyborns game box cover to roll dice in. And I would hold that out and make them roll it in that. And then I could drag it to me to see what they rolled, so they wouldn't be able to cheat. I generally have all the players roll in front of everyone else. I don't... What players roll should always... I view it as they should always see what each other rolls. Because I want to see as well, but not the Dungeon Master. He gets to roll behind the game card. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I do hide my rolls sometimes. But sometimes I will roll right in front of my players. I tend to roll in front of them more often than I don't. But that's probably just over 50% of the time. If I don't care, or I'm like players, like you don't believe what I'm rolling, fine, I'm gonna roll in front of you, here we go, like whatever the result is, I'm not gonna edit it, especially because my current players, they know that I cheated in their favor, but the moment they see a die roll from me, odds are I'm going to stick with whatever that dice says as the result. So they gotta be really careful if they ask to see what I roll, or they begin to doubt me, as it were, because I'll call their bluff and let them see it. But that doesn't always work out for me. Sometimes they get to win if I call their bluff. Let's see here. Bum Number 1 mentioned that he really liked this video series. Oh, thank you, sir. So did Imjum Sultans and a few other of you. Thank you. I'm not used to these, like, live stream talks, as it were. How much of a dork do I want to be? I guess we'll be a bit of a dork. So, Oh, do I really want to do... I guess I'll do this. So, I don't really watch them, but I am familiar because I listened to their VODs of a few VTubers, I think is what they're called. They're basically, they're girl streamers, for the most part, but not always. And they play video games, just like I do. But they're streamers, not Let's Players. I will eventually talk about the differences between us. Hey, look at that! There's an illusionary wall right there. Okay, and there's a cockatrice coming down here. Gotta be a little careful. I have to use the map to figure out where it is. Alright, there we go. And they do something called just chatting. And actually, just normal streamers do this too. They'll put on a game where they don't have to think much, and they'll just talk to their chat. And chat will ask questions. Obviously, or maybe not so obviously, most VTubers, even smaller ones, are a lot more popular than I am, so they have a greater audience that they can talk to. I mentioned, we'll talk about this later. So I myself am not, I like the idea of talking directly to you guys. I've always wanted more interaction with people when I play games. I've always tried to put the Let's into the Let's Play of my game series. I've been trying this for years. Back when YouTube supported annotations, I would occasionally have links in my annotations so that the players could click on something on screen and it would bring them to a different video. Anachronox, for example, was one such game where at one point you were given a choice of which 3 companions you wanted the main character to bring with you to a small side adventure. And I made it so that the players could choose one of the 3 characters on screen. Ro Bowman, Stiletto Sarah Enowa, or Pal 19. Now, YouTube has removed those annotations since then. Like, no annotations are supported any longer. I'm just mentioning it, though, because I thought it was interesting and a fun way that I didn't have to have any, I didn't have to create a poll. I didn't have to, say, decide for you guys which one of those things to do. I could do all of them. And you could just click on an option, and you would be selecting which character whose small adventures you wanted to see. I've been trying to do stuff like that for a long time to have an interaction with you guys. So this is the most direct way I can actually reach out and talk to you guys, is by literally talking to you. It's also been fun to read the comments on some of my videos, which I started doing during the Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines Let's Play. Can you believe it's almost been a year since that Let's Play? I think it's been 9 months since I recorded that game. And here we are now, at June 25th. 2 more months from now. Only 2 more months. It's going to go by so quick, everyone. And I'll be uploading. I've already installed them again on my computer. Called Chronicles and Consuming Shadow. They're waiting to be played. Woo! Fireball. Wins them all. Good job, Meg. Taking out that amulet. Anyway, thank you guys very much for such kind comments. I'm glad you like listening to me ramble on about random stuff. Hopefully some of it is interesting. Who was it who, I think it was Gibbets, who mentioned how he liked the idea of me using the Way of the Tiger fate rolls to determine rule questions. So, and I would also do that, Gibbets, whenever there was if there was like a conflict about rules, or if the players were like, hey, Tim, can we try this? And I'd be like, oh, you know? I don't know. I didn't think about that. Make a fate roll is what I'll say to my players. And they know that, okay, like we got a decent chance to have Tim say this will work, even though he didn't plan on things happening this way. I suppose I should also mention that when it comes to fate rolls, there was a non-weapon proficiency. We'll talk about non-weapon proficiencies eventually. That gave my players an extra +1 to all the fate rolls that they made if I had them make a fate roll. And so one of my players, my brother Joe, he's taken that, and so he wants to be the one who makes most of the fate rolls because he's got that bonus to further increase the chances that that it'll work. And of course, I don't care at all. Fate rolls are made when I really don't care about the outcome, and that's probably a bad way of saying it. What I mean by that is I have no preference one way or the other. The players, if it wins in the player's favor, fantastic. If it wins in my favor, great. I don't want to play favorites, basically, and I want my players to have my players come up with with something interesting and or unique, but I'm not sure if it would work. The fate roll is what I'll use, especially if I can't figure out a stat line to make them roll against, if they're trying some, like, acrobatics or something a bit more crazy. What else is here? Dennis Mayak was mentioning how he's never played Dungeons & Dragons, but enjoys listening to people talk about it. And Dennis, you sound like you are the type of player who is more, I think you mentioned it, but I'm gonna phrase it as results oriented, as it were. It's about the outcome of the situations that you are in. Video games do this very well, as you were mentioning. As like for the most part, you prefer playing video games than what you had heard about Dungeons and Dragons. I hope that I'm getting what you're saying correctly. Please correct me if I am incorrect. Is that? Yeah, that makes sense to say it that way too. Please correct me if I'm incorrect. Do I want to use a Moonstone here or hold on to the Moonstone? I'm gonna check. There's a room on the other side of this door. But I'm going to hold on to the Moonstone because I want that treasure for Meg, assuming she can get to the end of the game. There's no reason to do what you see me doing. Absolutely none. We should absolutely use the Moonstone. There might be treasure behind that door. It's just a key. We get no money for this. There's nothing to spend the Moonstone on when we're done. There's no shop to sell it at. But I like the idea, the theme, that Meg can walk out with this gem to pay for some R&R when she's done with this adventure. Yeah, this points out that, like, he would have a hard time accepting, like, well, not accepting, but, like, you don't want any of your characters to die. Nothing bad happens to them. And if some games have a story which involves losses and hardships, and you don't really like hearing about those much, man, Dennis, you would... The current campaign that I'm running would be rough for you to be in. I'll try to write down a bunch of notes about it so I can talk about the actual campaign I'm running at this moment the next time I talk to you guys. I think you guys would find it interesting, at least how I managed to how I've put it together, because I'm going on so many tangents at the moment, but there was a series of unfortunate events which occurred. And I'm tying them together in ways that my players believe them to all be the result of one particular thing. But it's more like 8 different things all happening at the same time, which makes it seem like there's one underlying cause for all this, but it's several. And some of them, my brothers have no clue about. They have not guessed. Others, they've guessed correctly, but about what's happening, but incorrectly guessed, like, the source of it, for example. So we'll talk about this, my actual campaign, in the next episode. Right now I'm just going to read these, go over some more comments. Yeah, so the difference between role-playing and, say, a video game like Dungeon Hack here is that a good deal of the fun of the game, for me and my players, comes from role-playing in the game world. My brothers will use accents for their characters, or will act a certain... Would have lost another level. They act a certain way that they wouldn't normally act in real life, for example. Although none of my brothers play evil characters, so that would that would be a bit too odd for them. Although they have played greedy characters in the past. My brother Joe especially enjoys playing thieves. But role-playing your characters in certain situations is a lot of fun. My players like even just role-playing amongst themselves. They'll all be at an inn. Two of my brother's characters, my brother Dave's character is named Canopy West. My brother Joe's character is named Ace Steel. And my brother Dave's character is a shaman. And he travels from the northern parts of, or more northern area of the world. And he comes from a very Viking-like society. He has a thick accent. And he and my Canopy and Ace get into arguments about fishing. And about what type of fish is better. Salt water fishing, or freshwater fishing. And it's hilarious to hear them go at each other. I think in real life they have the same positioning about fishing. And so it's funny to hear them chat about this in character as well. It's great. And they have different personalities for their characters. I have my players write backstories for their characters that I can utilize in the game world as well. One of the main underlying themes, or not themes, antagonists for what's happening right now in the city of Lotaeri that they are venturing in is revolves around the background of another one of their characters, and no one's figured it out yet because they have no reason to figure it out at this moment. The slightest hint that something's going on has happened, but they haven't been able to piece together yet what might have occurred. They think it's a different thing going on at the moment. It's fantastic. I love the amount of thought and guessing that my family does. My players do. All my players are family. Well, Dogma has mentioned how different my approach to running a game is compared to her way of running a game. So, I need to stress that it sounds as if I have, and I guess I do, have pages and pages written in advance for the encounters that will occur. But I do go off the cuff fairly frequently. Whenever combat breaks out, I like trying to describe each round of combat as it's happening, as each creature misses or my players hit the monsters or miss or something like that. I find it's fun, it's engrossing. My players like that sort of thing as well. Uh-oh. We're gonna have to figure out if this mummy... Oh, we missed a mummy with that as well. We got 2 more hits on it before it's gonna hit. Okay, woo, we won. I find that I work best by having an outline, and well, even more than outline, by having the story ready. I suppose this is a negative aspect of my type of game, if you don't like that sort of play style. I readily admit, and I've even mentioned to my players recently, that I feel like I'm reading a book to them at some points, and I'm a little worried that they're not that interested. Like, I'm losing them as players. But all of my players have said that they love the story and they don't care, which is great. That's good. It doesn't do a lot for my humility in that regard. But I'm always under the impression I could use more work. I'll talk about there's a tangent there I want to go on in a bit. But that I like hearing that because I do put many hours into writing pages worth of that's a troll. Of encounters. I like that. This is one of the few creatures that I like the sound effect of when it makes the attack. It chuckles as it attacks you, and they attack rather quickly too. They are one of the few fast-moving creatures in the game. They supposedly they have regeneration. This is not the case. They just take reduced damage from you, from what I have seen. Effectively, they're mummies, and they reduce the damage that you take. Mummies, I think, also have regeneration, if I recall correctly, in 2nd edition Dungeons and Dragons, which is why they take less damage. I'm pretty sure that's accurate. Yeah, so I put a lot of work into writing things well, and on that note, it was interesting when one of my brothers voiced his concern about the campaign, because he thought the campaign was going in a very I love that laugh. In a very particular direction, and was worried that he was going to end up playing in a horror game. And I do have scary stuff written into the game. Since I'm playing with adults, I think I can get away with some adult descriptions. Can I give you an example? My brothers found some corpses in a burnt out building. So a little bit of background. We'll talk more about this in the next episode when I try to summarize the campaign, what's happening for you guys. God, I want to spill the beans at least of what's happening, so I have someone I can talk about how everything's been set up from the start, and only now everything's beginning to come together. And what my brothers discovered like a year ago will finally be being put to good use in the next episode, for example. It's so frustrating. I'll talk about this a little bit later. Or in the next episode. And I forget what tangent I was talking about something, and I forgot what I was talking about. Oh no, senior moment. What was I talking about? Oh, horror, right. So, the city of Lotaeri has had a fire break out in the city, and it consumed many city blocks. Probably close to a third of the city went up in flames, with another third of this, is that right? A fourth of the city probably went up in flames and is completely burnt out. Another 1/4 of the city, or 1/3 of the city, is also badly damaged, and probably people can't get back into their homes until they're rebuilt. Help is on the way. Originally, help was going to be another month and a week away in game terms, but I'm accelerating it. I'm skipping a whole aspect of the aftermath of the fire, which is going to be a disease running through the city. Because my players have been in this city for 2 years as of this week. And it's just, I need to move to a different type of camp module, as it were. Or I want to play like in a dungeon, or take them to a swamp and not be in this city for too much longer. So I've accelerated the game, the timetable, and dropping the disease aspect of it altogether. Help will arrive in another, I think, like 7 days. But the city might not be standing, thanks to events which are happening at the moment. In any case, there's multiple antagonists and issues happening in the city all at the same time. One of them is this cult of a evil Cthulhu-esque-like god called Avuzal, named after the god in the Quest for Glory 4 video game. But it looks nothing like it. But the idea was kind of the same. This was many years ago that I created the idea of this creature in this game world. In any case, creating undead and absolutely nightmarish creatures is one of the things that this cult does, and they attempt to control these to spread fear, chaos, and the god's power. In this case, they created 2 shadows and placed them in this house to attack anyone who wandered by, just for the fun and chaos of it all, and to sow discord and suffering, effectively. Also, to try out this ritual that they had. Well, I described the corpses to my brothers and my friend Chris, and apparently I didn't realize at the time that one of my brothers, my brother Dave, he didn't like it very much, which is to say that it was a bit too much for him. So I guess, here I go, I'm going to describe it to you guys. So there were 2 corpses. Their faces were contorted in terror. Their eyes were cut out of their head. And there was this black cloth stapled to their tongues. The bodies were badly mangled and burned, and their fingers and toes were removed from their bodies as well. And it was supposed to be very gruesome, the way that they died. And my brothers were supposed to be a bit perturbed by that. As new adventurers, they're not used to seeing stuff like this that they would have to encounter. Well, my brother Dave, when I described that, and later on they were in a cemetery, and I described a shape leaving one of the dug-up graves as they were fighting zombies and skeletons there. And my brother Dave decided it was too much at that point. Decided, like, Tim, I don't want to play a horror game. I'm not going to play this game. If you're going to make it a scary game, I'm not interested in it. I just don't want to play it. Now, I did a much better job describing the corpses, made them much more eerie feeling to them. They had to make a saving throw to see if they would even approach them. And I believe that Canopy could make it to them, as could the NPC I'm playing, but my brother Joe's character, Ace, and then my friend Chris's character, Fern, were unable to get close to them. They were too afraid of what they look like to get close. But apparently it was scary enough that my brother Dave was willing to give up the game and not play it ever again at that point, which is a bit awkward because I kind of want him to keep playing, which means one of two things. I need to tone down such descriptions, which is what I'm going to do for the most part, or what I intend to do for the next scary encounter is just warn him that we're having a very scary encounter happen. I need it to happen, or I want it to happen, and you shouldn't play this evening because of it. Or we're going to say goodbye to you when we start role-playing it, and you will go. My brother Joe and my friend Chris thought it was perfectly fine. They're like, Tim, it was great. Like, we should absolutely hear about these horrible things. And my brother Joe is the one with kids. My brother Dave doesn't have children. So he's like, it was absolutely fine. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. But now I know a little bit more about my brother Dave and what he's able to tolerate or not. I know some people, like, when it comes to video games and what have you, I know it's I guess we're taking a small tangent here. Horror games are a rather unique what's I'm looking for? They're an acquired taste. I love horror games. I think they're amazing, and I would love to use more horror themes in my role-playing games, but when I did describe the corpses and had them there, it was not my intention to really make it this horrible, terrifying event, more just to draw attention to the fact that this cult exists, and they might encounter rather disturbing things as they play. Or their characters will. But it was good to have that feedback as well, so it was one of the few times where I and one of my players talked about this sort of thing, and because I want my players to be happy. I also don't want to be pushed around, so which is why the next time that we have a scary thing, which we're having probably 2 sessions from now, my brother Dave won't be there for that event. I've already warned him that we're going to be doing something frightening, and we're just not going to have him there. And it's going to be, I'm pretty proud of what I've written so far, so I'm looking forward to seeing how my friend Chris and my brother Joe deal with this event. Let's go back to comments really quick. There was a bunch of other stuff I want to talk about, but I forgot what all of it was because I'm an absent-minded guy, so I can't remember what any of it was. Let's move on. Arcanum. Some talk about Arcanum really quick. I do want to stress for Arcanum that I like the game. And Dan Bush summed it up, like the setting. The setting is amazing. I loved the setting of this game with basically it's steam engines. There's technology like clockwork spiders in it and so on. And there's magic in the world, and they don't interact with each other very well. The music was good. Graphically, it was okay. I thought it was acceptable for the time. I liked some of the themes and stories that they had. I liked your option to play any type of character. I don't know if I mentioned this, but you can be really disgustingly evil in that game if you want to be, which is fantastic. I never play evil characters. Most of my characters are always going to be the good guys. Like in Planescape Torment, I can't. I know I'll never bring my nameless one to be able to sell, like, fall from grace into slavery. I can't. I can't do it. I just can't. I can't make myself do it. I can't. But lots of other people can. They totally can. And they find it fun to do that. Like, it'd be like playing Star Wars Old Republic, and you have your guy tell Chewbacca to tear Mission Vale's arms off. and he does it or something like that. I think if you mind control him, and so I can't bring myself to do it, but other people totally will, and that's amazing. And Arcanum is one of those games that supports you playing that type of character if that's what you want to do, and I love that aspect of it. I'll never do it, but I can really appreciate the writing or thought that went into allowing people to play a type of character that way if they so wish. That's fantastic. Again, I can never do it. I'm always playing good guys. But there's nothing wrong with playing a bad guy in any role-playing game or video game, right? That's what these are games. They're not real life, so you better be able to play them that way. What was that? Oh, right, back to Arcanum. Yeah, so if I had to review Arcanum really quick, I think I would give it a score high enough that I could recommend it, which means it's got to get above 50%. But there were, man, in the unmodified game, there were a lot of bugs. There were a lot of bugs. There were a lot of balance issues, and the AI, the way combat worked in that game, the AI was not very smart. I feel like it was too easy, because it would always target one person and try to rush them with all the characters that were on the screen. So if you could run that character around, the rest of your forces could attack and kill the rest of what you were fighting. There was one other thing about the game, too. Oh, some of it was really annoying. Some of the sound effects that would, like, you could put buffs onto you or your friends, and the sound effect of it being active would never go away. It would be there endlessly. I've heard that for Arcanum, that there are mods in existence which address most of my concerns, although I don't know if it fixes the AI. But it does, there is like a balance overhaul to it. There's a mod which removes the sound effects of buffs repeating endlessly, and there's a high resolution patch for it. There's an unofficial patch which fixes the various gameplay bugs and spelling issues that were present in the game and so on. So if I was to play a game of that sort, I would totally play with that mod. In the same way that, like Anachronox, a game I really love the story to, but the gameplay was, the combat was not very good, and it was far too easy. And it also was almost unplayable thanks to some of the bugs in the game that would ruin all your progress. There was a save corruption bug, but there was an unofficial patch which came out for Anachronox which fixed all those issues. Or most of them, at least. Yeah, so I mentioned Arcanum because it probably won't be a game I'm going to record for the channel. Although it would be a fun game to record, I think I'd rather watch other people play it. I'd be a little worried that I would harp on the aspects of the game I dislike a little too much. Let's think here. Wow, we've been talking for like 47 minutes already, everyone. All right, so let's think. What else can we talk about? Adorkable mentions that I should probably let my nephew grow up a little bit before I try to do another game with him, or at least remember that he is indeed really young. He has to mature a bit, and thank you, Adorkable, again for that. You are absolutely correct. I'm probably being too harsh when it comes to my decision that I'm not going to roleplay with him again, given that he cheats. I should probably let him grow up a little bit, and probably play with him again. He is more interested just in pure battles. He wants to fight, he wants to roll dice, see what the results are, lose hit points, but preferably defeat whoever he's fighting. And I was playing a dungeon campaign with him. I ran the original red box dungeon, the one that has, like, what is it, 20 kobolds and the carrion crawler under the ruined gate door. So I was running that, and I designed I filled out the second floor of the dungeon with a bunch of different encounters for them to have, and it was great. It was absolutely great, but I detected him beginning to cheat during the game, and he continued to do it session after session, which is why eventually, when he claimed he rolled 7 20s in a row, that was a little much for me and his father. So, but I will play with him again, Adorkable. Thank you for reminding me that he is indeed, well, let's say he's a child. So, and I was a child too at one point, and I cared more about what the dice rolled when I was his age too. It's good to be reminded of that fact. Let's see here. What else is there? What else is here? I'm looking at other people's comments. Lewis Scarf mentioned carrion crawlers, which I was just talking about, and how much he dreads them. I've always felt things like a carrion crawler are really nasty. to throw at your players, because it gets, I think in the rule book it gets 8 attacks, and if any one of them hit, you have to make a saving throw versus paralysis, or if it might be against every single attack. I hope it doesn't work that way. I would house rule it so it didn't anyway. But if once you're paralyzed, it affects you instantly, and that's pretty much game over for you. Like if a swarm is the proper word to use of carrion crawlers. Let's say you throw 20 of them at your 4 level 5 players, and let's say that even half their attacks hit. So that's let's see, you throw 20 carrion crawlers, a swarm at them at the players. Realistically, probably only 4 of them would get attacked. Well, 1 on every player, depending upon how they're positioned, given how large carrion crawlers are. So, if half those attacks hit, that would be 20 hits on the players. So, 20 saving throws versus paralysis. They're probably being paralyzed and devoured, is most likely what's going to happen. So, that's a pretty nasty encounter. I try to avoid stuff like that, though, unless I want my players to be terrified, or I think that they're going to be able to handle it in some way. Yeah, I too dread creatures like that. There is quite a few creatures, now that I think about it. I guess Dungeon Hack's an accurate portrayal of some of Dungeons & Dragons. There are many creatures that have nasty side effects or special attacks that go with them. Even weak undead, like ghouls, being able to paralyze you. Zombies diseasing you. What are the weakest undead? Skeletons, zombies, and ghouls is what pops into my head when I think of them. And that's disease for zombies and paralysis for ghouls. Man, that's pretty rough. And skeletons take half damage from swords, for example, and piercing weapons do 1 point damage. Imagine how much damage you roll on them. I think arrows just don't do anything to them, if I recall correctly. So it's kind of nasty. I'm looking for that illusionary wall, which is somewhere here. Which I think I've talked about briefly for Dungeon Hack. But I do wish that illusionary walls were marked with somehow to indicate that they're different. That's a good bonus points for Aeon of the Sands, which illusionary walls there are slightly translucent. So if you're looking for them, you can see where the illusionary wall, which wall is in fact an illusionary wall. Oh, I was hoping there was illusionary wall, so I wouldn't have to use an emerald, is what I was doing. Well, we got that, I think, on the first floor, and here it is used on floor 5 or 6. Anyway, we spent the whole episode talking about comments. I didn't get to talk about a whole lot of anything else. So, I think when it comes to comments you guys leave, I will leave my own comments to them, but I will try to talk more to other random stuff that I have written down, or other stuff I want to talk about, rather than focus on the comments in the future. Just in case you guys are not so interested in hearing my thoughts on them. But I will still comment to all your comments, because I want you all to realize that I read them. I read all of them, assuming that I've seen them, and I will do my best to respond to them as well. Because I love getting them. I love hearing from you guys. Alright, well I got, according to my video, another 10 minutes left. So what can I talk about really quick? Let me see. Okay, so I was talking about rule disagreements and fate rolls at the end of the last episode. Something that I had been known to do is, and it's almost always done in my player's favor, is rewinding time. Things that I say, like we don't, when I play Dungeons & Dragons, we don't play it like a chess game. It's not supposed to be me versus the players. It's me relating a story and my players experiencing it and being part of that story to guide the eventual outcome of it. But we're not mean about it, or at least I'm never mean about it. If my players decide to do something, and... Or rather, hold on, let me make sure I word this correctly, because that was going to be incorrect. If my players... If something occurs, and there was a misunderstanding about the situation, we will rewind time to undo it and be like, okay, we just spent 30 minutes doing this, but you guys thought this was the, like, for example, my brother Joe was trying to chase down a thief that he saw steal from some folks, and his objective as a fellow thief, given this is a different character, a different campaign, not the Latrell one, but he was tasked with stopping this so that he could, because the city had a really rough winter and is having a really rough summer, and the Thieves Guild didn't want anyone stealing from the people during this one celebration they were having, and as a condition to being leveled up, my brother's character had to watch out for thieves during this one celebration, and he found one and was chasing him. And for some reason, there was some confusion about what was ongoing at the time. My brother Joe thought he was trying to chase down this guy, but he had been standing still, counting the coins in a purse that he had just acquired. And my brother Joe had shouted at him to get him to stop. And when, we role-played a little bit of it, and then we both realized that, oh, you thought he was running, and that's why you shouted to try to distract him, but he was actually standing still, and you could have snuck up on him, which is what he wanted to do to begin with. But he thought his target was moving, and so we rewound time, redid the entire encounter in order to fix the misunderstanding about how the situation was described originally to him, and everything was fine. I've done this multiple times as well, and once or twice there has been a full party wipe, and we have rewound time because of these two party wipes that occurred, they both had new players or guests present, and those guests were the cause of the party wipe in those two instances. So when me and the regular players would get back together again, we would talk about it a bit, and then I would rewind the game back to before the last session that we had played. One time was not the guest's fault. I suppose I should correct myself. I made the encounter a little too difficult, and the players when we got together again, they had asked me, Tim, what did you expect us to do in that situation? And I was like, I don't really know what I expected you to do in that situation. And when we had played again, it's funny too, because I myself realized, this is a little too tough. And so there was a great event which transpired, which I will try to describe the next time a little more fully. But I will say that I had another adventuring group help them, but there was a gotcha to the event. I guess I have 5 minutes left. I can talk about this really quick. So there's a cult of this god of Oozle, and we're playing. This is in the college years now, so we're talking 20 years ago is when this happened. And my players are trying to infiltrate the main temple, which is this small ruined church. And having played it before, having played the session before, and having lost everyone during the encounter, they are familiar at least with the layout of the church. I wasn't going it's hard to separate player knowledge from character knowledge, but they know that there's a staircase that leads down into a basement level, and there's some passages down there. But they need to infiltrate this area, and they're not sure how to go about doing it. And so they come to realize after one of the guests just walked in there and just attacked the cult. It was a glorious battle between the players and the cult, but the cult won. Eventually, there were just too many of them, all gathered for a ritual. So the players realize that there are patrols out in the woods, and so they decide that they are going to ambush one of these patrols. That is an ice storm spell. So they set up an ambush spot. One of my players is an elven ranger, and so he's got really good eyes and tracking, and he sees that there's a patrol that will path here soon. And so they set up an ambush point in a tree, and they're waiting. And a group of cultists show up, and they're all wearing robes. It's difficult to see them. They bend down, and one of them, with a bow on his back, is noticing the tracks as well that they left. And so they decide to spring into action and ambush this group of cultists. And they send an arrow into one of their legs, my friend Jim casts a spell of some sort to increase the strength and size of our of the paladin berserker, basically, that they have. He charges in to fight them. The cultists break up. An arrow goes into my friend Chris's ranger's arm, pinning him to the tree. And there's a big slugfest happening between the paladin. A spell goes off trying to hit Jim to silence him, but he manages to avoid the spell. And then the elven ranger looks to his arm and sees an elven arrow in his arm and realizes that this is not something that the cultists are likely to have. And then everyone realizes on both sides that they've ambushed another group of adventurers who are also here to investigate the cult. And they had already ambushed a group of cultists and were tracking the footprints back to the cult's location that my other adventurers had already discovered, but not infiltrated yet. And so it was a great way to have my adventurers, called Arcanum's group of all my players, and this NPC group I called the Swans of Delfton, to meet each other. It also allowed me to have an encounter with like 8 players present, or eight adventurers, but they were weakened after encountering each other and couldn't spare any time to really rest to recover spells. And so they had to go into the dungeon slightly weakened after meeting each other and fighting with each other for like about 30 seconds to a minute or so. It was great. My players, still to this day, they remember that. I remember that encounter very well. They loved how I pulled it off. It was perfect description of the cultists. They totally ambushed them. It was well done. It was the realization that these aren't exactly the evil people they thought they were going to be, but they sprung into action instinctively. To be fair, the Swans of Delfton would have done the same thing had they noticed them in the tree. They totally would have fired at them first, thinking that there was another group of cultists up there to kill them. Especially because there was, in addition to being cultists, there were some powerful, really horrific creatures that were present there, and so they were all rather nervous about this. And they were worried about illusions and what have you to possibly fool them into thinking that like there was not cultists here or something of the sort. But it went really, really well. It was such a great encounter. Everyone, we've got about 1 minute and 10 seconds left. So I guess I'll end this episode by saying one more bug with Dungeon Hack is that the Rings of Wizardry in this game are all Rings of Wizardry that only give you an extra 5th level spells, nothing else. Which is really awful for a mage. I don't care about Wall of Force or Hold Monster. I want more magic missiles and fireballs, and they don't exist in this game. So frustrating. So frustrating. Game needed more time in the oven. Alright, everyone. We got about another 38 seconds. I'm just going to cast a bunch of buffs on Meg before we head on down to the next level. You guys probably don't... Dispel Magic is such a waste of a 3rd level spell, by the way. The only thing Dispel Magic does in this entire game, to my knowledge, is it just removes all the buffs you put on yourself. That's it. I don't think it does anything else. I might remove curses, but there's a remove curse spell that guarantees that works. So, there you have it. We got another 20 seconds, everyone. I'm just going to shut up and let myself cast a bunch of spells. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll hopefully see you all in the next one. Take care, everyone.